To MarketBeat Mondays. We're glad that you're here spending your Monday afternoon with us. The market closed with kind of a interesting Monday. Not a ton of action today, but plenty to talk about. Here to break down the news of the day and of the week and also break down some of the big moves from last week are MarketBeat analysts Chris Markoch and Thomas Hughes. Guys, it is an interesting start to Monday. I think we're just going to start off right away with the biggest headline, and that's the AMD Nvidia news with the Chinese tariffs. There's a pause once again in the tariffs, but a really unique, one-of-a-kind deal that we haven't seen before is this percentage of sales for AMD and Nvidia chips. What kind of impact are we seeing in the market for this today, Thomas?
Really none. It was kind of a surprising news, but from what I can tell, the market kind of took it in stride. Kind of expected, not expected, in the sense that we thought that China sales would be allowed again somehow, some way. This is, as you say, an unusual way. It certainly is a precedent that we have not seen before. But yeah, the charts look like the market's taking it in stride, and it's just, another day.
Yeah, there was that slight dip when the news first came out today, but it seems like it's, like you said, it's kind of trailing along and not doing much of anything the rest of the day today.
Yeah. AMD and Nvidia both gave up like less than 0.3%, sideways trading by the moving average. They're near record highs. So certainly it was some news that affected the market, but it didn't really change the outlook in any kind of way that I can see now in the charts.
Yeah, I've just got go ahead, Chris.
Bridget. No, I was just going to say, I think largely the market expected that there was going to be some sort of arrangement that was going to allow Nvidia and AMD to do the export to China. I don't think they were expecting this arrangement, but I don't think the market cares. I think that's a different story for a different audience. For the investment story, yeah, I think it's just they knew a deal was going to get done. Now a deal's done, and let's go.
Yeah, that deal is done anyway, but the pause on the tariffs is still there.
Yeah.
What do we think of this next 90-day pause? Like you said, I think we're getting used to it as the market and investors. There wasn't any massive reaction to this news today. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, or is it just kind of par for the course this year with all of the tariff discussions?
I would call it par for the course with a good bias. It kind of, to me, shows that the trade talks are progressing to the point that there's no need to, turn the screws on them, trying to force them to do anything. So it seems like, there's some accord is being reached. So we're just going to be looking out for some more positive news, I think, in the next few weeks or months, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Well, there was some positive news to cover, and we're going to get right to those big ones. We already had someone in the chat ask about this one, that big jump in SoundHound. Thomas, I know you've been a fan of SoundHound for a while now, and this stock was up almost 30% today.
Well, right. The earnings came out last week, and the results were much better than expected and really affirmed a robust outlook. The problem that SoundHound had is there were some fears about the growth and the potential for growth. But these results were really a blowout. Revenue grew by over 215%. I think we outperformed by, like 25, 30%. Really a huge report. They also provided an updated positive guidance, which shows an expectation for the strength to continue. So now what we're looking for is next few quarters of hypergrowth and a high probability that the forecasts are too low. So we're looking for outperformance, improved guidance, and analysts lifting their targets, which we're already seeing. MarketBeat has tracked a few upgrades already that are leading the stock to the high-end range. So I'm expecting to see that trend continue as well. So all really positive things for the stock price. And really, the results and the action today affirm what we've been seeing in this chart the last couple of weeks, because we talk about it a lot. We've seen a bottom in this market. We've seen a high potential building for the market to advance. Now we have that catalyst. The market is advancing. What I'm seeing is a pretty strong signal, a reversal signal compounded by indicators like MACD and stochastic. Also a good volume spike today kind of cements that whole the whole outlook for a rising share price.
Yeah, I think one thing with SoundHound that I want to talk about, and I'll pull up the chart when we talk about this, is we've been looking at SoundHound a lot, waiting for this comeback, and we're starting to see it. But even with that 30% boost, you pull up the chart and you see we're not anywhere near those highs where if people were buying, at the start of this year at the $20 to $24 range, even those highest, estimates aren't anywhere near that. Do you think it's going to be a while before we see that those people who might have bought in at the high see a recovery there?
It could be a little while, but what I'm seeing in the charts right now and with the analysts' revision trend is they are leading this market to a level above critical resistance. So if we get above that level, regardless of what the analysts are saying, the market dynamic could carry us back to the all-time highs anyway. And then with the expectation of forward results being pretty good, expectations for improved guidance and for the analysts to start and continue lifting their targets, that would provide additional support, potentially lead the market to the high end of the range, to the recent highs. And then in this scenario, assuming that the results continue to be good, analyst trends remain positive, take it to new highs.
Let's move on to the other big pop today. And Chris, this was a really big one. In fact, if you watch our channel often, we had a special guest on yesterday that suggested this stock as a get in now. It's going to jump, a really good growth opportunity. And then it jumped the very next day after that video went out. So I'm excited to talk about this one. It's Nebius Group. I think that's how you say it, NBIS. Huge jump in the stock today.
Yeah, so this stock's it's an international company. It's based in the Netherlands. This is a play on AI infrastructure and data centers. The company they announced earnings last week. They came in a little light of expectations on revenue, but they were still well above revenue on a year-over-year basis. The company's not profitable yet, but they're guiding towards profitability by the end of the year. So this is a company that has an AI-centric, AI native, if you want to call it that, cloud platform, and it has a strong first mover advantage in the data center area, at least in Europe. And they're starting to see contract wins in the United States from companies that are looking for alternatives to some of the hyperscalers. So, Nebius looks like a good play right now. Chart looks really strong. It just crossed over its 50-day simple moving average. There was a MACD reversal a few days ago. So the stock looks like it's got some strong momentum right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of upward movement in this chart. And again, just to see that big boost in one day, when you see an almost 30% jump in one day, there has to be onto something. Before we move on to some other potential dip stories instead of this big jump stories, because I know when you're watching, you want to get that big jump before it happens. But what do you watch out for? If you see two companies like this that both see almost 30% jumps in one day, are you instantly waiting for that next pullback, or could it just continue to go higher? What do you watch out for in these big jumps?
For me, once they start making the jump, it's hard to put more money into it until you get a pullback. So looking for these jumps to happen, it's part of the news cycle. Also seen in the charts, you can kind of see the market building up some steam and some pressure, getting ready for a big move. But then once those big moves happen, you're going to want to let them play out, reach their tops, pull back a little bit, show signs of support before starting to put more money back into those plays.
Yeah, to Thomas's point, and specifically to Nebius, the move was so strong that the stock's basically now at the consensus price target, which was great if you were in it before the earnings report. Now, you might want to wait for a little bit of pullback. I see at least one analyst has raised their price target to like $90, so that's great. But you still might be looking and seeing the stock pull back just a little bit before you wanted to get in. I agree with Thomas. When you see the blow off top like this, you kind of, okay, let's wait just a little bit. Let's wait a beat.
I like Doridio's advice here. He says, take half profits at a big jump. I think that's a good way to look at it. Pull back some of your money on a big jump like this if you're already invested in it. That's a great tip for investors out there. Thanks for that one.
Never a bad idea.
I want to move on to the buy the dip opportunities now. We had a big video out with Thomas on Friday with 3 buy the dip opportunities and had a lot of good suggestions that people commented on, wanting to say, what do you think about this buy the dip opportunity? What do you think about this stock that's down right now? I'm going to start with the newest one that's dropping as we speak, and that's Archer Aviation. Several people in the chat want to hear about Archer. Apparently, earnings just dropped, and so is the stock right now. I've got the chart pulled up. It's not showing as much of the extended trading data as I would like to see, but you can see there is a drop right now, and I think it's continuing to go down in extended trading too. What's behind this drop? These guys haven't had time to look at this one yet, so they're probably going to look up some more.
I would imagine it's something to do with the timeline to commercial operations. Let's see here.
Yeah, I mean, it's down a lot.
Net loss. Yeah, I don't know what they were expecting. 6 aircraft, Olympic Games.
I will say really quick while you guys are looking at that data, we did a video about a week and a half ago with one of our writers, Jeffrey Neal Johnson, talking about kind of comparing Joby to Archer. And one of his takeaways on Archer is that they just haven't been as transparent. Joby's been far more transparent. There's also the manufacturing debate where Joby's doing all of its own manufacturing. Archer's kind of getting manufacturing done through another partner, through Stellantis, I believe. And so that's kind of the takeaways with the two. Joby stock's been doing fantastic. Archer seems to be getting some critics, and now it's showing up in the stock price for sure. Anything else you guys have seen?
I would just say there's just not a lot of detail that I'm seeing immediately in these the shareholder materials that have come out. Certainly, the market would want to see an update on the advancement of the technology, the advancement of the regulatory process, the timeline to commercialize operations, and there's really not anything major that I'm seeing that would provide a catalyst. So in this situation, what I think we're looking at is just a company that's not making revenue, that has a high expectation, and so now the market is just kind of repricing in the reality, which is that it's still going to be a few quarters at least before we start seeing some significant revenue in this company.
I do think that's a good point, that there's a lot of expectation, because while Archer and Joby are still considered speculative, investments, they're still new. This industry hasn't really fully taken off yet. There's still expectations because more and more investors are getting in on them early, especially the retail side. A lot of investors are interested in these. The big question though, in the next series of stocks we're going to talk about is this a buy the dip opportunity? If you're a retail investor who thought Archer was too high at around 14, now that it's dropping, you can see the consensus price target is saying there's more upside now. Is now a good time to buy on this pullback?
I think that Archer by itself, this is potentially a time to buy, because right now, the stock just dropped another 2%. We're down 5% right now. We're falling below our critical moving average. This may not be a time to buy. This may be the time to get out. I would certainly be wary tomorrow morning when the stock market opens. Also, given what you just said, we're seeing Joby really differentiate itself as the leader in this space. So it's possible that what we're seeing now are Archer investors leaving Archer in favor of Joby.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more from you guys in the chat. If you're an Archer investor, if you're a Joby investor, what is your take on this big crash in Archer right now happening post-market? Are you selling? Are you holding? Are you looking to buy more? Let us know in the chat right now what you are planning to do with Archer today, if that's a stock that you hold right now. Really great company to bring up. Thanks for putting that in the chat earlier. That's a good drop to talk about. Let's move on to some of our other buy the dip stories. Again, if you haven't seen Friday's video, definitely want to go to that, because Thomas lists 3 of the stocks that he recommended buying on the dip, but there's been some other suggestions for people who commented and watched that video that I want to get into. And the first 3 we'll talk about kind of as a group. That's some different chip makers, tech companies that are all down right now. That's the IBM, SMCI, and Intel. I don't know where you want to start with those 3, but those 3 are stocks that are down right now. Is now a time to get into them?
Well, SCMCI fell because of weak results. They were still pretty solid results, So I would think this is probably a time to buy this stock. The outlook is still pretty strong. It's not as robust as it was before. So the potential for the really strong rebound, getting it back to the $100 level, might not be in play right now.
Right.
But provided we see some support kick in the next few days, I would certainly look at this as a buying opportunity for this stock.
Yeah, Chris, what are your thoughts on Intel? This is a company that has really struggled, seen a lot of volatility in the last few months as other chip makers and other companies have done well. Do you think this pullback on Intel is a good time to get in, or is this a stock that's just going to continue to kind of struggle along?
My gut feeling is the stock's going to continue to struggle along. I kind of look past the headline news. The headline news is whatever it is. And I don't think it really has that much impact on the stock. I think it's just the company's not really giving investors a lot of reason to believe that there's a turnaround story here, and turnaround stories can tend to take a long time. And quite frankly, that's just not something I want to be a part of.
Yeah, I'm looking, I've got the consensus price target right now. And when you have 23 analysts saying hold, right, 5 saying sell, only 1 saying it's a time to buy, I think that's a really good sign to use caution if you're going to get into this one on a buy the dip opportunity for sure, because there's not a lot of positive sentiment for that stock right now. The last one to talk about with the chip makers was IBM. Thoughts on this company that's been around for a long time? We had another guest on a week ago or so who was talking about this as a quantum computing play, saying that they have a lot of investments in research and development into quantum computing. Will that small sector now be enough to kind of help this stock in the future? Thoughts on this one?
It looks to me like IBM stock price was up pretty high before it began to correct over the summer. So right now, what it's looking like is a garden variety correction. Regardless of the depth, the uptrend still looks intact. Critical support's probably around the 225 level. So provided we don't get a movement below that level too significant, I would expect to see IBM bottom and rebound. Right now with IBM, it's not so much chips as it is AI infrastructure and what it can provide for businesses and industries as far as their own networks and applying AI. And it's got a pretty solid outlook. But again, it's not quite giving enough for the market to stay happy.
Yeah, I think that's true. All right, we've got several people in the chat asking about BBAI. I know we had kind of discussed, should we talk about this one before? It looks like there might be some action happening even right now in BBAI, going down a little bit more. What's going on with that stock right now?
Oh my gosh. My after hours data says it's down 15%. Looks like they might have just dropped their earnings report. There wasn't a real high expectation. So if it was bad, then earnings preview, I guess it's due out today, is it?
Yeah, it's supposed to come out today.
It was delivered. It just hasn't come down on my stream. I bet you if we go and pull up the company website, we'll find one. But apparently the report didn't have what the market wanted to see, which was better than expected results, an outlook for profitability, anything in the deal pipeline to suggest that revenue would improve in the future. So right now, what I'm seeing in this price action is affirming what we were talking about before, which is just that BBAI seems like it should be a good company, but it's got too much competition. It's kind of a latecomer to the game. It's fighting against Palantir for this market share that Palantir is obviously dominating. The stock has been showing signs of topping since earlier this year, and now that top has been confirmed. So now I would say there's probably a real low chance of this stock rising above the 775 level anytime soon. It'll probably continue to move sideways and could potentially move down into the $4 range pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm looking, Thomas. So the revenue came in 18% below the year over year.
Right.
It was down 18% year over year. Gross margin was down year over year.
Right.
So it it doesn't sound like it was a very strong report. I'm trying to go through the highlights here, but
right. It sounds like it reported everything that it shouldn't have based on what the other AI leaders are reporting, which is robust growth, better than expected growth, wider margins driven by revenue leverage, building up a pipeline, and a robust guidance.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about that comparison to Palantir and trying to take market share. There has been discussion from several investors saying BBAI is going to start taking market share from Palantir. They've got a really good system. They're going to start getting more of those contracts. Clearly, that is not showing up in the earnings data. Chris, what do you think about the chances for this company? Are they too late to the game? Is this big drop-off that we're seeing going to be a signal that if you believe in BBAI, add some more stock, or is it too risky right now to get in?
I shudder to say that it's too late to get in, or that that it doesn't stand a chance. But again, as we talked about last week with Palantir's just got an enormous first mover advantage, and so somebody like BBAI, it's not. I think there's some investors that might be looking at Palantir and BBAI as sort of like an Nvidia AMD story, and that's giving BBAI far too much of a push up. It's
too much credit, right?
Yeah, too much credit. BBAI is much further back in the race than even where AMD is compared to Nvidia, and that's just kind of facts. And I mean, Palantir's just got a huge lead, and it doesn't really appear that it's going to be giving up market share anytime soon. And that's why investors just have to be so careful. I know there's a lot of investors that want to believe that BBAI is going to be the next Palantir because maybe they missed Palantir, but you're gonna need to see better results than this to believe it.
Right. There's something I'm looking at right now that people need to be aware of and keep in mind, that the short interest as of the mid-July reporting was 25%. That's high by itself, but the short interest has been steadily rising since early last year. Activity ramped up this year, rose through the to-date period, hitting a record high like early in July and in middle July. So short interest is very high. The market does not have a lot of confidence in this stock. They're not betting on it. With these results and with this price action, I would expect to see the short interest having increased and not decreased.
It's going to embolden short sellers,
Right. So with this in play, there's just not a reason to be bullish on BigBear AI until something really significantly changes in their fundamental outlook.
A good analysis of this one on the fly, guys. Thank you for that, because a lot of movement in the stock. We'll see what tomorrow brings for a final price point for this one. Let's talk about
now it's down 20. I'm sorry. Now it's down 23%, 24%. It's just falling and falling.
So remember, Bridget, we're just real quick for our audience. I mean, last week when we were talking about Palantir, one of the things I said about Palantir and the reason why I eventually decided to, full disclosure, I do have a small position in Palantir, but the whole idea was Palantir was a company that the bar was there and Palantir always cleared it. It was kind of the but they overcame a lot of objections. I don't see BBAI overcoming objections in this report. In fact, I see them creating objections that weren't there before.
Right. Palantir always had that deal volume, making new contracts, getting new deals.
Exactly.
And that's
that you're just not seeing that here, obviously. So that's a sharp drop after hours.
Yeah, it says a lot for this company. So let us know what you're thinking as a BBAI investor. I know we have a lot of viewers who are interested in that stock, have been in that stock. What's your plan today? What are you doing? We want to hear from you. Let's talk about another sector. This is one that's come up in the MarketBeat Mondays the last couple of weeks, of just a few different people interested in UnitedHealth and looking at an update. Has that stock reached a bottom? This is another buy the dip story stock where we've seen a sharp drop in this stock all throughout the year. Lots of headline-driven news here, getting all of this red that we see for this company. Has it reached a bottom? Is now a time to buy? What are your thoughts?
Can't say for sure it's reached a bottom. I thought that it had earlier this year. Certainly does have those headwinds. But what I said in an article earlier this year, what I would say again, is that this is still a fundamentally sound company with strong cash flow. Once these hurdles are overcome, the dividend and the share buybacks, which are safe now, will still be safe and will continue to grow and support the share price over time. So right now, these headwinds seem pretty near term. As far as the stock price action goes, this most recent sell-off over the past few weeks hitting these new lows seems to be an overextension. I think the market sold off legitimately with the first sell-off. Momentum was so hard. Sentiment is so sticky right now that it continued to sell off because nobody really wants to step in and buy. But with these new lows, volume is ramping higher. But the MACD and the stochastic are both diverging. It shows some underlying weakness in the movement, a high probability for reversal. So I would expect to see the stock price, reverse and rebound pretty soon, probably face some resistance around 320. But in this scenario, start forming a bottom. It might take several quarters or a year or more for that bottom really to flesh out and form into a full-blown reversal. But if we get some relief in the news cycle with the regulatory hurdles and the investigation, then the rebound could take off this year or when the news cycle picks up and become quite strong. Because I think that at these levels, the stock is still pretty deeply undervalued.
I do want to point out too, I just think the thing that sticks out to me just looking at the charts and the data is the consensus price target is still very, very high for this stock, and it just keeps getting lower, which would you would assume there's an upside there. If so many analysts are still saying buy this stock, there is an upside going on. It's interesting to see and something for investors to think about.
So I think Thomas had it right. I mean, the stock sold off because it was at a level that was probably unsustainable. And that doesn't mean that the news in and of itself didn't merit the stock selling off. But once those sell-offs happen, when a stock was as high priced as UnitedHealth, they just take on a life of their own. And I think, yes, it's probably gotten oversold now. What I see in analyst ratings, some of them have lowered their targets, but the overall price target is far higher than where it is, where the stock's trading right now. And that would suggest that, as Thomas said, when things quiet down a little bit, this does look like an opportunity.
Right. I mean, the consensus is looking for about 45% upside right now.
Yeah.
But the revision trend is negative. So the revisions are leading to the low end range. But only like one or two revisions are at the very low end of the range. Most of them are in are in the 300 to 350 range, which really gives the stock a little bit of upside, certainly an outlook for rebounding. And then like Chris was saying, if the analysts can start lifting their price targets, then the reversal will really start gaining momentum at that point.
Yeah, interesting story. And sticking in the healthcare field, because we don't talk about this sector much, let's go to Novo, NVO. That one also another buy the dip story that investors are really interested in because it's down quite a bit right now. I've got that chart pulled up. Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I wrote about this company probably about a week ago, Bridget, and so this is another stock that's got a lot of noise going on around it. One of the things that's happening here was they're in a debate, I guess I would call it, with hims and hers, and they're trying with, as a lot of investors know, hims got the right to sell their version, this compounded version of GLP-1, because Novo and Eli Lilly were having problems keeping up with the production. What Novo and Lilly are saying is that period has ended and HIMS should not be allowed to sell the compounded version anymore. And that's noise that's going on with the stock right now. Again, the earnings came in, let's see, I'm trying to see. They reported last week. They came in with better than expected earnings. The revenue is weird from the estimate, but it was higher on a year-over-year basis. So, Lilly is still the dominant player in the GLP-1 space. So Novo Nordisk is still a solid competitor there. It's, I'm not sure if I would call this a buy the dip candidate. I think there's going to have to be something there that convinces me that the rebound is underway. I can see from the analyst price target and the consensus that that's very tempting, but I'm just not sure if I'm there yet with the stock.
Yeah, that is a really good analyst consensus price target for this company. But even the analysts are still saying, man, this might be a hold right now, even if the upside still looks like it's there. I do want to pull up the chart really quick. This was HIM's chart, and that was one of your buy the dip opportunity suggestions, Thomas.
Right.
Any other new additions to the HIM's discussion? It looks like the stock is still, today down, hasn't really done much of anything. It's holding at that same level.
Yeah. I think that the action kind of aligns with what I was expecting, just to see this market kind of consolidating within the uptrend. Definitely has pulled back some, has corrected, but this correction aligns with the uptrend. Right now, we're still seeing the price action above previous support. So assuming that no bad news comes out, all of the fundamental factors in the report supported a higher share price. Just may take the market a little bit of time to get excited about it again. But we're looking at robust growth, solid margins, good cash flow. Really no reason not to think that this stock can't set a new high and do it fairly soon.
Yeah, there was definitely enough positive outlook on that from investors who are excited about the future of that company. So we'll see what happens with Hims and Hers. I'm wanting to get to some of the comments coming in of other stocks to talk about right now. One is one we've talked about several times during these MarketBeat Mondays, and that's NVTS, Navitas Semiconductor. There is a slight pullback now, but I don't know that you can call it a huge buy the dip opportunity because the stock has been up so much this year. But there is a little bit of a pullback going on. Do we think that this is a firm support here, Thomas or Chris, or do you think that there is still more room to fall for this stock? I'll give you a chance to pull up the chart a little bit more.
I have to look at the chart here.
Oh yeah, it looks like a pretty good dip buying opportunity to me, just based on the technical setup. This market, sold off in 2022, has been kind of moving sideways since then, trying to put in a bottom. This year, the market confirmed a bottom with a solid move higher earlier this summer. Volume is going through the roof. Right now, the market is above the cluster of moving averages. We're looking at almost a golden crossover. That should happen pretty soon. But this pullback right now, the last few weeks, is really pulling back to support at this cluster of moving averages, where I would expect support to be strong and it to become a launch pad for the next rally. In this scenario, the stock could be retesting the $9 level pretty soon and then moving up to set a fresh high.
Yeah, I've got the consensus price rating up right now, Thomas, too, and that is a little concerning of is this the time to buy? It's getting closer to that consensus price target where it's at right now, but there's still a downside on that price target right now. It's a small enough company, though. There's not a lot of analysts covering it. Thoughts on that one?
Have a lot of coverage, like you say, but some of the most recent analyst activity are boosted price targets that have the stock trading around the $8 range. That's not a huge amount of upside, but it certainly gets the market back up near these recent highs and sets it up to move higher, provided we get a good report in the upcoming report that's due out. Let's see here.
They just had a report on August 4th.
Oh yeah, right. Just sharp as focus.
Beat on revenue came
totally. So what I see here is they've reaffirmed the long-term outlook, but they're expecting a little bit of near-term softness, which I've seen in some other reports.
Right.
Monday.com this morning had a kind of a similar report where the long-term outlook was actually boosted, but they're looking for Q3 to be a little bit softer than what the market really wanted.
Well, we've talked a lot about buy the dip opportunities here today. We want to get to some of the stocks that our commenters want to hear about. I'm going to go way back to the beginning of the chat, and the first one that came in was from eHelp. Thanks for being here. He wants to hear about Open. Let's talk about that one. I don't know that we've talked about that on the channel before. What is going on with that stock? Opendoor Technologies.
Yeah. The stock popped a couple of weeks ago.
Right. It looks like a bottom could be in play. Certainly, yeah. Moved down to long-term low, set a new low, and then spiked with a volume spike. That's a good sign. Short interest is still pretty high, though. That's concerning.
Yeah, I think I want to talk about.
Bridget. So I think you mentioned this before we came on. So the price action, it looks like today was pretty bullish, and that seems to be because the company canceled their plans for a proposed reverse split, which probably was due to the fact that the stock shot up so much in the last couple of weeks. So they said, "Hey, we don't have to do that anymore because we're going to be able to stay out of the bad graces of NASDAQ here." So yeah, so the investors are happy about that. Not sure. I think it went up a lot because, again, it was a short squeeze candidate. I'm not sure if the squeeze really took place, and this is still going to be a stock that's going to be heavily dependent on interest rates, and the housing market needs to reverse. And again, to me, it's one for traders. If you're an investor, I don't think you'd really want to stay away from this, but I'm sure traders can find fun ways to play the stock.
Very good. Well, let's get on to a few other names. I'm going to do, if you've watched this before, I'm going to give each of them a stock to look up because we're just cold taking some of the stock recommendations that you have in the chat. Earlier, Mohawk wanted to know about CDNS. So Thomas, if you want to look that up, CDNS. And then Chris, I'm going to have you look up HNST. These are both newer names to me. I'm just kind of pulling them out.
Okay.
HNST. That is Honest Company. I'm going to just get that one first just because it's the first one I pulled up. If you're a parent, this one's familiar. I think this is the baby company. This is the diapers, wipes, skincare products, those kinds of things. But this stock has not been doing so great all of this year. It was down from up around, what is that? Almost $9 and down to about $4 range right now. Is this a buy? Is there a recovery? I'm curious to see the all times on this one because this company's been around for a while.
Yeah.
But it did IPO on 2021. Interesting.
Yeah, that tells me it probably came. I shouldn't say it without knowing it for sure, but that tells me it probably went public via a SPAC. And some of those stocks haven't done so great, but this one's.
The upside potential from the consensus price target is an interesting one and might be why Sarah wanted to hear about it, just because it does look like a enticing upside, and it's a moderate buy rating, has 3 buy suggestions from analysts over there too. So it's an interesting one, and I do think that this speaks to it's a good time for us maybe as a group to talk about the data that we're waiting on this week. This is the first retail stock that we've talked about so far today anyway. Could this be really dependent on what's happening in the economy right now or anything company specific?
I'm sorry, Bridget, what was your question again?
Yeah, just talking about like what this is a retail company, right? This is a consumer product out there. We're waiting on some really big data coming out this week. Could that be impacting this stock at all, or is it more going to be company specific?
I think the results you're seeing right now for Honest are company specific. There's a concern right now. The concern seems to be about how fast this company can grow. I don't think they're questioning the fact that the company can grow, but I think the question is how fast. One thing I've noticed that's encouraging is it looks like the company is now swung to profitability, and it's managed to be profitable now 2 straight quarters, although it came in 2 cents lighter than what the consensus was for this past quarter. So I think the concern here is just the fact that, the company's been in that $90 million range as far as revenue goes, but they're not showing that ability to go higher. And so that means they're either going to have the top line grow really fast, or they're going to have to get a heck of a lot more efficient than they already are. And I'm not saying either of those things can't happen. This is the first time I'm looking at the company, but that seems to be the issue, is going to be, if I were an investor, those are the kind of things you have to look at, is to say, either the company's going to find a way to grow revenue very fast, or they're going to they're going to become a lot more profitable really fast, so that their earnings look better. But
yeah, I think that's a good look at this company. Again, it's just a cold look at a company that we haven't really looked at in a long time. Thomas, I hope I've given you enough.
Yeah, it certainly looks like they've got a firm customer base. I mean, like I said, the revenue's solid. It's just, I think the question is, how much is it going to grow? Sorry.
No, I think that's good. I just want to get to a couple more stocks before we wrap up. We usually try to wrap up these MarketBeat Mondays around 3:45. We often go a little bit longer than that to try and squeeze in a few more of the stocks you want us to talk about. So, Thomas, let's get to that next company. That's another new name for us. Cadence Design Systems. What have you learned about this one?
I've learned that I think I like it. It's a technological design company that can help companies design anything from a chip to a full system. It seems to be well positioned for AI, for next gen technology, as companies are leaning on it heavily to help design their next gen technologies. So revenue has been growing pretty well, accelerating to 20% year over year. Margins are also widening. The guidance was good. The last report kind of inspired the analysts. They're looking pretty positive toward the stock. We're expecting margins to widen significantly on a year-to-year basis and produce accelerated earnings growth. Right. So really not anything that I'm seeing that makes me not like it. I certainly want to put it on my list of stocks to write about. Analyst forecast for the stock price is pretty positive. They're bullish. They're lifting their price targets. Coverage is on the rise. So yeah, this looks like a good one to me.
Yeah, interesting stock to bring up. Thank you for adding that suggestion to the list. We have a lot of other names. I'm just going to give you both maybe one more each, and then we're going to wrap up on some of the big things to look ahead to this week. Again, there's so many different companies out there. I wish I could get to all of them at the same time, but I'm just going to go for a couple that I see off the top. Grab is one that we mentioned on the show yesterday. It was a guest analyst or a guest speaker that we had. And so I want to hear your thoughts on Grab, Chris and Thomas. This is a company that is much like Uber. I can actually give some details on it. Grab is a lot like Uber. It's in Asian countries, but it has more than Uber. It does a little bit more than that. I think the guest even said it has its own insurance. It does food deliveries and things like that, but it's a really low price stock right now. It's not a huge company at the moment. Is this a company that could take off? I'll give you some time to look it up if you've not heard of it before.
Right. Yeah. Grab, I've covered this one before. We've talked about it before too. They're a super app. Their business is everything to do with e-commerce. They're in Southeast Asia, which I think is a fantastic growth market. A lot of supply chains that are moving out of China or trying to be, rationalized are going to Southeast Asia. They produce a lot of products. So Grab is producing digital infrastructure for e-commerce at all levels, including ride sharing, but also restaurant ordering and other forms of e-commerce. So it's really, to me, is a centralized way to play on e-commerce in Southeast Asia. So if you're looking for emerging market exposure, e-commerce exposure, potential for hyper growth, I think that this is a good choice. The stock price action recently looks pretty favorable too. Last couple of years, it was struggling to gain traction. Late last year, we moved above a critical resistance level, consolidating since then. But now it looks like the action is caught up with the moving averages, and it's set up to complete a reversal. So provided we get some good news here pretty soon, I would expect to see this market start rallying and moving higher.
And that good news could come on August 21st, because that's what I'm seeing, that they report earnings. And I think one of the keys there is going to be, I think the analysts are projecting earnings growth of 120%. Now, before people get too excited, that means that the earnings per share are going to grow from about, 1 cent per quarter to about 2 cents. But still, that's growth. And I think that's what people want to see, because it looks like they're growing revenue solidly quarter after quarter and year on year, but they haven't quite been able to move profit in that regard too. So I think that's the key one people are going to be looking at, is that EPS number. but they're growing the top line steadily, and it's been strong year over year.
Good. All right. We will get to those final two stocks. I've got two names. I've got the charts pulled up and everything. So, Chris, let's have you talk about TMC, the metals stock. I've got that chart pulled up. And then, Thomas, I'm going to have you look up Tempus AI. I know we've talked about it before. That ticker is TEM. These will be our last two stocks. And then we're going to go into what to look ahead to this week, because we could see some major market moves coming yet this week. Tom or Chris, I'm going to pull up the TMC metals first. This one's had a really strong year, full year of 424% growth. Year to date growth is really great too. What's going on with this company? Why are we seeing so much growth?
Well, we're seeing a lot of growth because of the sector that it's in. I mean, we're talking about it's exploring for nickel and cobalt and copper and manganese, and that's all right in that wheelhouse of things that we need for EVs and renewable energy storage and all that stuff. What I'm seeing is the stock has dipped significantly since the end of July. It's down about 18% in the last month, and a lot of that's because the company didn't do very well in the earnings report. This is a company that it's not only not profitable, but it's pre-revenue. This is an exploration company. So, this is the first time I'm looking at it, Bridget, but I would also say to investors, this is one you got to be a little bit careful on with a stock that's up 377% year to date, 72% in the last 3 months. It's a lottery ticket. It could work because, again, it's in the right sector, but this is a company that's going to have to show that it's profitable, or that it's got a path to profitability, and more importantly right now, that it's got a path to revenue. And again, it's the first time I'm looking at the company, so I don't have answers to either of those questions, but that's, I think, the problem that you're seeing right now is that investors are getting a little bit spooked because it had a bigger loss than expected and it's not profitable.
Yeah, I do want to just point out really quick that there is a pretty good upside from consensus price target on this one with where it trades now after this, 18% drop. Now analysts are saying, okay, you do have some upside in this. This stock should be worth a little bit more than it is right now. So that's something to consider too with this one.
Yeah.
All right, we're doing brief overviews on these last couple of stocks. So Thomas, let's get to yours. This is our last different name to cover. Again, we've covered this one on the channel before. Tempus AI, what's going on with that right now?
Yeah, that's healthcare AI. They're building a huge database of information to help with hard to treat illnesses, cancer specifically, also helping doctors provide specialized care. Results are good. It has outperformed every quarter so far this year. It's raised its guidance, both reports so far this year. We're expecting that trend to continue. Really affirms the long-term outlook. Analysts are pretty positive on the stock. They've been lifting targets. Upside's a little bit limited right now because the consistent targets aren't that high, and there's also some concern with the valuation. Right now, it's not profitable, but it's on track for profits within the next 2 to 3 years. Once it pivots to profits, it should begin growing its bottom line very rapidly, so that the forward outlook is really much better. But right now, this year, valuation is a headwind. But I think long term, provided they're able to continue to execute the way they have been and produce these results, they should be able to get the stock price to move higher. Yeah. So right now, I'm looking the forward outlook, even with the robust earnings growth, it's still trading about 50 times 2029 earnings, which is kind of on the high side. But again, it's outperforming and raising guidance, so that forecast is probably low. So in this scenario, we're looking for analysts to start lifting their targets, and that'll help the stock price move higher as well.
All right, very good. I like the look at these last couple of stocks. We had a few more names coming in, including one of your favorites, Thomas. That's AMPX. I know that there's kind of sideways movement with that one. I know if you're interested in that one, Ravi, Thomas is very bullish on AMPX. has been for a while. So we won't dive into that one so much. I want to get into what to pay attention to this week. There's a lot to pay attention to this week. A lot of different news going on from the White House, and just some data that we're looking for right now that could make some major market moves yet this week. I feel like there has potential to be a really volatile week in the market, depending on what comes out.
Yeah, Bridget, I'm going to be looking. The CPI for July comes out tomorrow. The PPI comes out, I believe, Thursday. So usually they report back to back, but this month, for whatever, I think there's a gap between the two. But certainly, I'm going to be looking for that. And as Thomas alluded to when we were opening, I think the market today was reflecting the fact that they believe the report could go either way. And I think the stocks are going to go either way, depending on where that result comes in. If the result comes in, I think there's a better than likely chance that it's going to come in a little hot. And if that happens, then I think you could see a bigger sell-off in the market. But if inflation comes in tempered, that shows that maybe the tariffs aren't having as big of effect as what people think, then we could be off to the races too. So,
all right. Right. The CPI this week is a tough one to call because it'll probably be hot. It's forecast to have accelerated at the core level from last month. So we want the CPI to cool down to give the Fed the ability to cut rates. But I think in the event that the CPI is also hot, contrarian, the market may still like that news because it would kind of push us maybe closer to a recession and possibly help Mr. Powell decide to preemptively cut rates. So it really comes down kind of to how it affects the rate cut outlook and whether or not it's going to be for good reasons or for bad reasons.
Yeah.
A lot to consider and a lot of what ifs. We'll just have to see what the market does this week, or if it does nothing at all. I think today, to me, was a little surprising that we had all this big news. I know somebody just commented asking about that 15% news for AMD and Nvidia, and there was some movement in the market, but not a lot. And I just think it goes to show we can't really predict what the market is going to have a huge reaction to or kind of not react to right now.
So again, and what I always say, what drives the market is the earnings outlook, and none of the news that we've really talked about negatively affects the earnings outlook. And even the CPI data won't really affect the earnings outlook too badly unless it's really wickedly hot. So as long as the outlook for earnings is still positive and there's still some hope for, trade relief, macroeconomic headwind relief, FOMC relief, the market could continue to rally.
That's actually a really good point that Thomas is making, because one sector we really haven't heard from yet is retail. And I think that starts happening this week. And that's actually probably going to be more important than the CPI, because so far, from what you've been hearing from a lot of companies with earnings, they haven't been lowering their guidance on expectations of higher inflation. Retail stocks for sure will. If they expect that there's going to be higher inflation hitting the consumer, they're going to be the ones to target it. So, I think if you start seeing that weakness in the retail stocks and the lowered guidance, I should say, if you start seeing lower guidance in retail, that could probably be a bigger story.
A lot to watch this week. We have covered so much today and got longer than we wanted to. Thank you both so much for your time today and diving into all of these different companies and all of the biggest newsmakers in the market right now. We so appreciate everybody who joined us live for this chat today. Thank you for all of the stock suggestions, all of the comments that you made. It helps a lot to hear from you and what you're interested in. That's what these MarketBeat Mondays are all about. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. Stick with us this week. We have a lot of interesting videos coming out throughout the week. I'm working on some great topics too, so we hope you'll join us for all the videos that we're going to be posting every day the rest of this week too. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, happy investing.